Dobar dan. That's all the Croatian I know. How did I do? Well, good afternoon, and thank you very much for coming to my talk. As I was just introduced, I'm Steve Howe. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Newfire Global Partners. We have teams all over the world, and in fact, we've got 3 offices here in Croatia, in Zagreb, and Split, and in Osijek. So this talk is a little bit about sharing some of my life experiences, and hopefully showing how it can be applied to you and your career. And a question: how do I turn the slides? Okay, here we go. Great. So let me start with a simple question, and maybe a little bit provocative. Are you happy? Are you happy with your career? Think about it. And so I was a little surprised to find out that only about a third of software developers are actually really happy with their careers. And to me, that's very disappointing in a couple levels. One, obviously, we spend so much time at work. It's such a big part of our lives. If you're not happy, that's really disappointing. And the second thing is, of course, software development is very intellectual, cerebral. So if you're not happy with what you do, you're probably not performing at your top level. So obviously, I think people should be happy with their careers. And when I kind of look at this room, I see a lot of young people. I'll share, I'm a bit older than you. I turned 50 this year. I'm very proud of that. And I can say at 50, I've seen people's careers kind of evolve over the arc of 20 and 30 years. And I can share that, I've got a group of friends that are, I guess, very happy with where they are now after 20 years of their career. And I also have a group of colleagues that are unhappy. They feel like their goals have just always been a little out of reach, and they're at a place that they're just not sure why they haven't achieved kind of happiness in their career. And what's the difference, in my opinion, and I guess the title gives it away a little bit. I think, it's one group really project managed their careers, the other group didn't. And I'm a big believer that you are the only project manager of your career. So you really have to set the goals and kind of drive forward. You can't just kind of go with the flow, because if you do that, after years and years, you'll find you may not be exactly where you wanted to be. So why listen to me? Well, you don't have to. A lot of people don't. But I will say I am a lifelong student of the School of Hard Knocks, which is a way of saying trying lots of things, making some mistakes, learning, trying to improve. As I was introduced, I'm a trained engineer from MIT, which is one of the top engineering schools in the United States. I actually dropped out of a PhD program at Harvard to start my first company. And over the course of 20, 30 years, I've kind of become a relatively successful business person and investor. And I give credit to the fact that I really kind of project managed that journey for me. So a little bit about myself, just to give you context of some of my opinions and how they might apply to you. So in 1996, and I think before a lot of you were born, I dropped out of a PhD program with no money to start a company called Patient Keeper. And this was a time where digital healthcare was just starting. Doctors were just starting to use computers. And people said, this is maybe a good idea. And mobile computers, these like US Robotics Palm Pilot devices, started to emerge, these little computers that could fit in your pocket. And we saw a great opportunity there. So without any money, I started in the garage, which was really a rundown apartment building that was being kind of renovated, and started to put this together, would give the pitch, would talk to a lot of people about this idea. And after a few years of doing this, in 2001, we actually became one of the largest companies in Boston, a big employer doing really innovative stuff and really making a change in the healthcare industry. And that company was ultimately acquired for almost $250 million US dollars, so almost $250 million. So it was a pretty successful commercial run. In fact, there's a book written about it called Smart Ups, which you can buy on Amazon. And then in 2008, during that economic crash, I started another company called Shareable Inc. This was a company that used these pens with cameras in them that would allow us to record what doctors were doing so we could convert their written text into data. And that was also a very cool company. A lot of innovative work was done. It was ultimately acquired by a machine learning company. It wasn't as storied, but also very cool. And then since then, I've been really advising engineers, CEOs of tech companies, and investors. A couple years ago, I became a limited partner of a fund called OpenView, also based in Boston. They're the smart money behind companies like Datadog, Calendly, GitPrime, and other companies I'm sure you've heard of. It's been a great journey. And today, I am the co-founder of a company called New Fire Global Partners. As I shared, we span the world. And I love this company. We're not going to sell. It's the last company I'm ever going to be at. We started this very simply with hiring a bunch of engineers I'd worked with before around the world and connecting them with CEO friends of mine trying to bring innovation into the market. And after 5 or 6 years, we've grown to be over 600 people and growing, and doing just really innovative, really important work every day. So enough about me, but hopefully that gives you some background and context. Let me talk a little bit about you and how to and tips to how to advance your career. So we've organized the talk into 5 tips. I'll start with the first one. So like with any project, you have to have a goal, right? And we all know this. Any project without a goal is not going to be successful, right? But setting the goal isn't so easy, and especially if you're early in your career, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I don't really know. So I can tell you that, in my experience, goals typically fall into 3 major categories. One is typically, money-oriented, kind of, I want to make $1 million. And that's fine. I can tell you that kind of money-oriented goals tend to be a little short-lived. Once you, achieve a level of financial comfort, money actually isn't the thing that's going to get you up in the morning and get excited about your job. But it's a perfectly, reasonable goal, and that's an important goal for a lot of people. Another is a goal of kind of a role orientation. So, maybe you want to be the CTO of a company someday, the top engineer, the top technical person in your company, and that's great. I've also found that, so for example, maybe you want this to be the CTO. You really have to know what that role is. A lot of engineers may not actually understand what a CTO does. And I can say that with some experience. I've been hired by companies to coach CTOs to be CTOs, usually first-time CTOs. So even they are learning about how to be a CTO. And the kind of third area is kind of a mission orientation. So, hey, I want to save the world. And that's a very interesting goal. And sometimes it may sound lofty or academic, but it's kind of sometimes a theme that kind of keeps you going to, again, kind of get you excited to continue to push forward. Now, as you set these goals, you kind of have to pressure test them. They're so important, goal setting. And I've got a picture of a golf ball here. And for those of you who know me, I'm probably the last person who should be making sports analogies. But I have taken exactly 1 golf lesson. And golf is a game about getting the ball in the hole with as few tries as possible. So in my 1 golf lesson, I was playing with a golf pro, and I hit the ball, and it almost made it into the hole, but didn't go in. It was, since I'm in Europe, I'll use a metric system. Let's say it was 3 centimeters away. And the golf pro asked me a question. He said, what's more valuable, the ball that is 3 centimeters short of the hole, or the ball you hit that went past the hole and was 3 centimeters past the hole? And I'm an engineer by training, so I said, well, they're equivalent. I'm going to make it in the next shot. This cost me 1 point, 1 stroke. And the golf pro said, no, that's not quite right. The ball that went past the hole, that ball had a chance. It could have gone in. The ball that didn't make it to the hole, it never would have gone in. So to me, that was a really interesting point to make. It means, set the goals high. Try a little harder. At least you have a chance. So when you set your goals, aim high. Don't set low. You're going to work your whole life for, you don't want to be disappointed to, not achieve what you want. And also, be careful what you wish for. In the United States, there are classic stories about these physicians, these doctors, who've spent many, many years training to be doctors. It's a very long path, and it's expensive. Medical school is expensive. You have to borrow money. And then when we finally become doctors, they realize, oh, wow, this isn't what I thought it was. I don't actually want to be a doctor. And at this point, they are highly trained to do one job that they don't like, and they've borrowed so much money that they, have to work that job to pay the loans back. So, be careful what you wish for. Make sure you really think through what your goal is. And then finally, always be flexible. I started my career very mission-oriented. I did a lot of stuff in healthcare because I wanted to save the world. And then I got older, and I had a family, and I was like, oh, I probably need to make some money too, right? So your goals can change, and they should change with, as your life changes. So, be flexible. But, the second tip is so important, because in your goal setting and trying to think of the future, you need mentors. Mentors are just so important. They know the path ahead. And typically, they are on your side. They can be tough. They can say all the things that you don't want to hear. They can tell you you're doing a terrible job because you're doing a terrible job. But what they're trying to do is help you. And in my personal life, I've had 4 mentors that totally, helped me with my career development, helped me find the path forward, and actually have, probably really shaped my life. The first one is a guy named Rob Ryan. He was the founder of a company called Ascend Communications. He started that. It was a telecommunication company. He started out of his kitchen, and he sold it for $27 billion US. And I saw him talk at my university. And after his talk, I kind of ran all the way to the front, and I said, hey, I'm Steve Howe, and I'm trying to start a company. I have no money. This is my idea. And he kind of laughed. And we talked a bit more, a few more conversations, and he became the chairman of my board of my first company. And through Rob, I learned a lot about the difference between being an inventor, which is someone who has ideas and makes inventions, to an entrepreneur, which is someone who makes a business and has an economic model. So I owe a lot to Rob. He really put me down the right path. After Rob, I would say I met Ryan Drant, who became a mentor of mine. Ryan, he's a young guy. He's actually my age. Looks like a young guy. He's actually my age. He was the partner of New Enterprise Associates, which is a big venture capital firm with billions of dollars. When I was 26 years old, he wrote me a check for $43 million to help start this company. And obviously, that's a lot of funding to help make dreams come true. And his funding allowed us not only to build a business, but my relationship with him, he taught me a lot about finance, economics, how to work with investors. And that was so key to me, because if you ever want to build big companies, companies require money. And successful companies require even more money. So you have to have a good relationship with investors. The third person is Jeff Sutherland. He invented something called Scrum, which you might have heard of. And so after I got the $43 million from Ryan, I hired Jeff as my chief technology officer. And Jeff, of course, taught me how to build software at massive scale. And he is just an amazing person, very kind of spiritual, very philosophical. And he has been a lifelong friend. In fact, he became an investor in my future companies, and he's an advisor at New Fire. His wife officiated my wedding. So we've just been a great family friends. And then finally, Lori McGraw. She is one of the presidents of the American Medical Association, which is a very powerful organization in the United States. She is one of the toughest executives you'll ever meet. She's so demanding. She requires perfect execution every single time. And through Lori, I learned a lot about leadership, about accountability, the importance of soft skills, of having relationships with people. And today, I run a 600-person company and growing. I could not be doing this if I didn't have Lori as a mentor in my career. So these are my personal mentors. And as I look back 20, 30 years, I couldn't have gotten on this path without them. So again, I can't overstate the value of having mentors in your career. And one thing to think about is some of you are senior developers. Think about mentoring a junior developer. Not only is that great for the junior developer, it will give you a perspective about maybe what you need in your career. It's something to think about. How do you identify, a good mentor? Well, a few things. They actually have to know what they're talking about, right? And so they should be successful with, demonstrable results. It's like, yeah, that guy, if he did that, he probably knows what he's talking about. So you want someone who knows what they're talking about, know on-the-job training, that really can, guide you. Typically, they've been leaders. They've kind of grown companies, grown teams. Leadership and mentorship are very similar in many ways because it's about helping people and teams do the best work they've ever done. So typically a good mentor is also a good leader. And you have to have a long-term relationship with them. So back to your goals, you should have common goals. So maybe you both want to save the world. And that's kind of your common mission. And obviously a mentor can't really be your boss because your boss has to play management games and do things like that. So it's not exactly the right kind of relationship for a mentor relationship. So the third tip I would give you is you got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that means a couple things. One, you've got to take risks. You've got to be happy to fail, to learn from failure, to just own it, and then, and course correct. That has to be, again, back to that golf analogy, if you're gonna aim high, take risks, you got to do that and be prepared to fail. That's part of it. Now, our marketing team put the skydiver on this slide. I don't think that's a sport you learn by trial and error, but, maybe something about taking risks, I guess. The second thing is you got to learn to negotiate. It's funny, so, I work with a lot of salespeople. They're very comfortable negotiating. I have found that engineers have trouble negotiating for a couple reasons, because negotiation always has a level of discomfort, right? And you feel like, oh, I'm making the other person feel uncomfortable. This isn't a good place to be. But as I've told many of my engineer friends, there are ways that I think engineers can successfully negotiate. There's a system I call kind of shared problem solving. So it might go something like this: like if you want a raise, you want to make more money. Who doesn't want to make more money? You might go to your boss and say something like, I like this company and I add a lot of value to what we do. I am thinking about starting a family and I need more income to support my family. Can you give me some advice of how I can earn more income at this company to work here and also satisfy my economic needs? Stop and try to problem solve together. So it's kind of I have something valuable. I need something valuable. How do we figure this out? So another example might be if you wanted a career change. You might say something like, I have a deep understanding of our technology and of our product and the customers we serve. I'm thinking the next step for me is product management and being more customer-facing and more strategic, get above just the coding level. How can you help me at this company take this knowledge I have and make it valuable for this organization? Full stop, problem solve together. And again, I find that it's logical, it's professional. No one's going to say, oh, that guy's a jerk or that girl's a jerk. And I think that's a great way to negotiate. And every time I give this talk, by the way, everyone in my company asks me for the raise the next day. So now, of course, if you want to have that ability, you need to get yourself in opportunity-rich environments, right? So if you want a raise or you want to be able to evolve your career, you got to be in a company that has lots of opportunities. And as a CEO of New Fire, I think about that a lot. Again, I have a lot of ambitious people, and I feel this huge burden all the time. Oh my God, I got to get really good projects, really good work to keep these ambitious people, excited. It's fuel for my team. And there are, I think, a lot of companies like this out there. So, I think, you want to keep an eye out for companies that are opportunity-rich. We are very focused on company culture. I think that's a big part of it. Our culture is very straightforward. I always joke there are companies that list 12 things as their company culture, and you ask anyone, hey, what's your company culture? And they have to look at this poster on the wall and say, our company culture is 1, 2, and 3. That's you have to read off a poster. It probably really isn't your company culture. Ours is very straightforward. It's about constant improvement, open communication and trust, and then respect for the individual. And as part of that culture, we've invested very heavily in career development. So we have coaches, we have mentors, we're even building an academy for junior developers who are getting started in their careers. And like I said, we try to get customers that are typically venture-backed companies, mostly in the United States, because they're trying to grow rapidly. Any venture-backed company, and I see some of you nodding on this, has to grow really fast, right? So now this puts you in a situation where you have to be in the fast lane because everyone wants to go fast. Because if you want to advance your career, you want to be in the fast lane, not the slow lane, because the slow lane doesn't really get you anywhere very quickly. So again, you want to be in a situation where it's very opportunity rich, where, for you to do all this and have ambitions, this can be an area where you can actually grow. And a part of that is my last tip here, and I think my last slide, is you want to do work that matters. You want to do work that's meaningful, that's going to keep you excited, be happy with your job so you can do your best work, and also create new opportunities for your career. So here are just some things that we work on that I'm very excited about as examples, and it meets kind of my mission and why I continue to wake up every morning and work very hard. And I'm usually the first person in and the last person out, which is hard to do when you're worldwide. But so one example, on the top left, we work with a company that that brings Internet of Things into people's homes to create virtual hospitals. And during the pandemic, all the hospitals were filled. They were of huge importance because people could just get care at home. And during the pandemic, when the hotels were empty, they turned empty hotels into hospitals. So this company in the last 6 months raised $200 million to keep fueling this, because not just for the pandemic, and now the world realizes, wow, this is a great concept. People want to be cared for in their homes. This is probably the future. But certainly during the pandemic, this was very meaningful. It saved a lot of lives, something we're really proud about. The second one is something that was also very valuable in the pandemic, which is there are autistic children with special needs. And they used to go to kind of special schools to get the education and the care they needed. That wasn't possible during the height of the pandemic. So we worked with a company to actually make this available at home, to connect these very specialized teachers with these children at home that needed this type of care and training. And that was huge. Third one is around early detection of cancer. We do a lot of data work, a lot of data science and data engineering. And cancer is a terrible thing. I'm sure it's touched a lot of people here in a bad way. My dad died of cancer. When we found out he had cancer, it was very late. There are very few things you can do when it's so late and you discover you have cancer. This company uses big data to, when someone draws your blood, they do something called a liquid biopsy, and they scan it to see if it matches any fragments of cancer. And by doing this, they can detect cancer really in just a few weeks of when it starts. And so if you can detect cancer at the beginning and not the end, there are so many more things you can do, and many, many lives, millions of lives can be saved all over the world. And so this is something we do. It's so fulfilling for me. Again, my father, who I think about almost every day, died to cancer. The bottom left here, also, in Europe as it is in the United States, the older population is getting, they're more and more of an older population. And a lot of these older people are very lonely and they have depression. So we work with a company that built an application to keep them connected to the rest of the world to help with depression and make sure and to address loneliness. And that's also been very impactful. And then finally, it's interesting. We work with a company, again, it's another data science predictive analytics puzzle that we help solve. In South Africa, there's a big problem with AIDS, HIV. It's a high incidence there. And at the same time, the medication for AIDS is so good now that when you take the medication, you can live your whole life. You don't have any symptoms. In fact, it's so good that people think they're cured. So they stop taking the medication, and then they make more people sick. So with this group, we built a technology that would predict which patients who are on the medication are thinking about stopping to take their medication before they stopped. And like a lot of places in the world, there are more patients than there are clinicians and doctors. So what we were able to do is we were to give the doctors every week, hey, you should be calling these patients. And they would call them, say, hey, you may be having thoughts about whether or not you take the medication. Keep taking the medication. And it's funny, if you ever met nurses, they are it's an amazing job. They really know patients really well. Nurses with data science, they see it as magic. We would get calls like, how did you know that person was going to stop taking the medication? And it's just really cool and really powerful stuff. So I'll stop there, but these are some of the kind of, again, some of the work that we work on that I think has been really great for our team. It's been really fulfilling for me, and certainly, for our younger team members, I believe is helping advance their careers. So that's my last slide. You guys have been a great audience. Thank you for coming to this talk. My Croatian team members tell me that Croatian audiences are very difficult to impress. So hopefully this was okay. And I'd love to continue the conversation with you. We have a booth, New Fire Global Partners, in the exhibit area there. I'll be there all afternoon. So if you'd like to continue the conversation, please stop by. Thank you.